more you build their influence, that builds your influence, because your proof, their success is the proof of your results, right? So you are a strategic, let's talk about all the objects. Companies, high-rise influence. You are the strategic influence architect.
Would we work in the word architecture as in like work that in as far as like our process, or just some sort of like building a skyscraper, building your high-rise?
I think we just use synonyms, industry terms for construction. Blueprint, construction, foundation, scaffolding.
Yeah, I mean, blueprints,
lumber, whatever, steel. Yeah. So think about how does that fit with the process where if we're building someone a skyscraper.
Yeah, so I think what would be a good, like typically you have like the 4-stage content factory. I feel like 4 to 5 stages is very digestible.
Yep.
I think that would be good to try and summarize my entire process of building your high-rise influence in 4 to 5. What do you think? It should be more?
I think 4 or 5. I think you have kind of a phase 0, which is like if you're going to talk to an architect, you want to build a custom house. Before they do a blueprint, you're going to have sort of an audit, a discussion, like, hey, is this a fit? And if it is, and they have the ingredients, and it's going to be a good thing, then the architect, draws up the blueprint.
Yeah.
And then
the step 0 though, I feel like I can almost like, this will be my pitch, so to speak.
Right.
And then I can gauge, okay, is this going to be the right fit? Do you have the right ingredients that I can cook with?
Right.
I know how to cook. You have the ingredients.
Right.
Let's make a meal. We've said it before.
Right.
So yeah, what do you think would be the best? And also, we're going to kind of white label this 4-stage content factory. That's what we talked about.
Yep.
And some of the resources that you have, some of the resources that I've created, and then mold it into this, and then kind of build upon that.
Right. So we'll handle more of the technical things, and you'll handle more of the relationship, strategic things.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. What do you think would be, as far as blueprint goes, like what are the main bullet points you think of? And where should we put the new white labeled 4-stage content factory? Will that be like part of it is here, part of it's here, or the whole content factory will be in one?
Content factory is a framework that works for building anything. So whether you're like a Stephen Covey guy, which is start with the end in mind, which is like, okay, if you have your skyscraper, what does it look like? What does that end result look like? And then you back into what are the steps and components to get there? And then you test it by going chronologically, saying, okay, blueprint, what are the necessary ingredients? So you want to build a 50-story skyscraper. Okay, what's generally necessary for that?
Yeah.
Your business has to be of a certain revenue. You need certain ingredients like the clients talking about your stuff, a podcast, clear proof of your reputation and what you've done, how you distinguish awards that you've won, like all that stuff. Right?
So you think that blueprint, this section should be mapping out and identifying the strengths and ingredients that they already have?
Because the blueprint is what you need prior to construction. Most people, they just start constructing, so it's just like a mess everywhere. But a blueprint is, okay, here's the framework. Here's where, all the different parts of the building are. So mapping out everything about their strategic influence. Influence comes in 3 different categories, three sort of dimensions. The influence in terms of like who they know. There's what they've done, right? So like achievements, and we've done these particular projects, achieved these particular results. And then there's where it's been shared, who, what, when, why, how, that kind of stuff, right? And because the thing is, people when you think about influence, you're trying to convince someone that you're legitimate, because your underlying client is convincing their client that, hey, if you're selling life insurance or you're selling anything, that we are the service provider that we are the choice among all the other people who could, do your financial portfolio, right?
So just kind of like here, it's almost like, there's an audit that starts out just to make sure that they're the right fit for what we're trying to do for people with high-rise influence. But then the blueprint is almost like this secondary audit to where we break down I wrote like, what is their message? Who do they serve? But it's pretty much just their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
So
that's like the initial consulting. But you may even, this part before you actually build a blueprint, which is what's your goal and do you have the right expectations before we even start mapping stuff out to see like, do you think we can build this thing?
For sure.
Right? Like if someone says, I want to build a skyscraper and I have $1,000, like, no, sorry. My business does less than $1 million a year. No, I don't have any sort of proof that I do good work. Okay, well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
No ingredients.
Cool.
So that all of these are sort of like a filtering, pre-qualifying before you can actually start, okay, let's just kind of see where things, because when I think of blueprint, I think of, okay, everything's mapped out exactly where every nail, every beam, every, like everything's all, you know, it's so detailed that you can then assign workers and they build it out and everything fits.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool. So what else do you think we need to add to blueprint?
I think we have to have like one main blueprint, a blueprint for a financial services person, right? So like financial services, their model is, there's a consultation and you sell them a life insurance package or there's they have to buy some sort of financial product or set of financial products.
Yeah.
And they want regular inbound, they want their reputation to drive more referrals instead of randomly or in low volume this stuff comes their way. So the blueprint for a financial advisor is going to be different than a blueprint for your, uncle who's building the 3 largest golf projects on the planet. That's different. It's a different set of relationships. It's a different objective. So I think blueprints are kind of by the type of business model, by the type of client and their particular goal.
Cool.
So even before we talk about, ask them what their goal is and how they want to do it, I think we got to go back and look at you and say, okay, who is it exactly you want to serve? You could serve anybody, but initially you should start with what's the one clear avatar? What's the thing they all have in common, right?
We'll put that over here. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, you and Caleb are my first 2 clients. And there's obviously a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
It's a little different, but do you think I should go as niche to say okay, financial services business?
I don't think it has to be financial services, but I would think there's, I'm going to guess, but the common thread is people who have perceived leadership in their industry. And when it's a service industry, there's a lot of people that all do that one thing, right?
Do you think I should only be chasing after this is pretty much all what I've dealt with is founder-led companies, right?
That's boom. That's one qualifier.
I think that's easy.
Yep. Put that in there.
It's not going to be creator-led. It's not going to be we're building the image and then launching the product.
Because the founder already has a business and now they want to amplify the reputation, as opposed to a creator is, hey, I need you to build my reputation from nothing so I can get clients.
Yeah,
so the founder implies an existing business at a certain level, right? So if they're founder-led, I mean, everyone can say they're a founder. In these one-person shops that declare they're CEOs.
And I'll put a little here, I feel like there needs to be qualifiers for that founder. They need to be some sort of leader, because if I'm trying to build an image around someone and they don't have any kind of natural leadership skills or even speaking skills, they can't.
Not even the skills, they have to have proof that they've done it.
Yeah, totally. So proof of leadership, essentially.
Okay, so how do you determine that objectively?
Yeah, I mean, that's tough.
Because you're amplifying this leadership thing.
Yeah, I'd say there has to be some sort of content there, whether it's, or some sort of speaking. They have to be a voice that's there's demand for in the marketplace, essentially.
Right.
So that's how I would objectively put it. I don't know how to be
quantify it?
Yeah.
I say some level of public speaking or publishing or podcasting.
Great.
Because what you're going to do with high-rise influence is amplify what they already have. So if they're strong, so I can already see this blueprint audit. So let's say it's like Caleb, and we audited his thing, and we found, you know what, you're really strong on the podcasts and YouTube, but you don't have the books. You only have some of the public speaking. You're only partially visible on the web.
Yeah.
You're only sort of visible on social media. I give these grades A, D, C, B. If there's these axes of capability, and we say, this is public speaking. There's some of it, 1, 2, 3, 4 of these things. With Caleb, there's a lot of podcasting and then publishing, articles, books, whatever. There's some, and some of these are, this is really important. This one's a big deal. This is not really, this is something, they're all it stacks up to some volume. Well, we could grade these and say, you get a B, get an A, get a C, and let's just say this is your web presence or whatever it is, right? And maybe that's it's a C- or something like that, right? Then we'll say, all right, this is what we're working with. This is the X-ray of your brand, of your influence.
So it's just an audit, and we can even integrate me and you, the audits we've practiced with the tools that you use.
Yeah. So this is measuring total amount of influence.
Are there quantifiable, because it's really easy, like we've done a number of these with their website, like is there ways that that with like podcast, public speaking, and
Yes.
other than just like engagement, like is there actual quantifiable, like I can pull out a tool, because that's like kind of the wow moment.
Yes
that
and no.
People are like,
so
wow, like you have all these analytics about my website.
So the thing is, we have to have a unique measure, so like unique enough that clearly it can, this is what the architect does, but not so unique that it's like completely made up garbage kind of stuff, right? So it's like, okay, it sort of makes sense. So there are measures of influence, and the way people measure influence is at different levels of the funnel. So one of them is like total web press, like base, audience base. So base is your followers plus like your web traffic plus your like domain rating for their authority, right? That's what most people will use. But there's also something to be said, like maybe you don't have a lot of this in terms of this digital presence, but some people that are, like, for example, the guy we had lunch with today.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
He's like, okay, maybe he's got a little bit of this because as a CFO, he has to appear on TV and like answer questions about, how much did you, what about Walmart, this and that. So there's other things that are, let's just call this credibility, industry credibility in their industry, right? And then this might not show up, but it's going to be like their relationships that are not necessarily visible on LinkedIn.
So how do I audit that?
Well, we have to do the best we can. We have to guess because by definition, we're starting with digital. I mean, it's sort of implied strategic influence architect is almost a strategic digital influence architect, but I don't want to say digital in here, not because it's more words.
Because we're doing so much all what I'm doing is personal connections.
Because this will build, like this stuff that's visible above the line fills out all the stuff below, which is all the like meeting people at Starbucks that doesn't show up on digital, like that kind of stuff, right? But the stronger this is, the more it's like, the bigger the thing is, the iceberg is above water, the bigger the thing is below, right? So I think this doesn't have to be like super precise. I think people will conceptually agree like, I'm probably. Yeah,
I just really like the model, like, it's such a selling point when you're giving someone a website audit and you're like, okay, this sucks. Hey, here, like we can still have some improvement, but you're actually doing pretty good on this metric here. This sucks.
And it's actually good to have disagreement, not like disagreement, but discussion, because now it's like, now you're talking about these different components, right? Now you've drawn them in.
Yeah, it's just cool.
Because we'll find stuff that they didn't even know that they had.
Exactly. That's why
and we'll
really
benchmark
like that.
them. The other part too is because it's in an industry, I mean, these numbers can be arbitrary, letters arbitrary, but if we benchmark, if this industry is financial services, well, how do you benchmark against other people in financial services versus in construction, versus in real estate, versus like, those are all different areas, so we can map them against peers. And that kind of bell curve way of like, you're in the 90th percentile, and that's, you're at 80th percentile, that's a B, right? It's going to be hard to argue that.
Yeah.
Right? So anyway, this doesn't have to be exact. This has to be enough that, okay, we understand that influence is quantifiable to some degree. It's not exact, like, reputation. How do you, is it reviews? Is it, whatever. Yeah. So this is close enough for them to agree the concept works, right?
I think it just, conceptually it needs to make sense, but then also we need to have enough quantitative evidence to where there's evidence to what I'm pitching, right? And
because then when you execute this whole thing, we're going to come back to the same report card and say,
look at the
improvements.
Have
the green. Yeah, imagine this, because let's say the overall score is, a 72, right, which is like a C plus. But then you add in some of these things, or we take, like I love arbitrage, the idea that if they're really strong in one area, let's not only multiply this with $1 a day. So where you're strong, multiply it. Where you're not as strong, repurpose.
Yeah, exactly.
And then, so these go higher, and then
that's what my that's what my whole business model is.
Yeah,
is leveraging work they're already doing.
So I love leverage, but I translate leverage, not a but, and I translate leverage into amplification and repurposing. Like get 80-20 and multiply something, multiply across, multiply up. Right? And that way, we don't have a SaaS yet to do this, but we could build a SaaS around this.
Yeah.
It's not that hard. That they get this report card every month. So it's not just some because all the other people that do personal branding and reputation, they're like, it's soft and fuzzy about, your reputation, you got more followers or some like nonsense. Or, I got you booked on so-and-so's podcast, or your LinkedIn grew. Okay, that's cool that your LinkedIn connections grew, but did that actually grow your influence?
Yeah.
Did that actually then translate to your deal flow?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when things like SEO and like, then there's a softer component because, there's referrals and whatever. And like one referral can be a huge deal.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And we can't necessarily track that any one of these things turned into something later because they saw this and that. And then later they ran into that person at the conference. It's like, oh, I saw that you can't track that.
Yeah.
So that's the part. So this tracking is just directionally showing that we are building influence. Not just this influence number is a raw volumetric number, but directionally. We've gone from 72 to 87 in financial services, not in, we went from 72 to 87, but we did it by, having a bunch of cute puppy photos. Yeah, but that doesn't build it in, it has to be built in the right direction too.
Yeah, it's what we talked about EEAT.
Yeah.
I mean, it's exactly that.
Yeah, exactly. But they don't understand that and they don't want to know about all that. And,
I mean, but I'm thinking of this like, I'm also thinking about like, we're building the steps right now, but like, how am I going to pitch this? How am I going to make this
There's no pitching
viable?
it. I think what you do is you say, look, influence can be measured.
Yeah.
Here's yours.
Yeah.
And if you want to know why these numbers are higher or lower, let's drill down. Here's actually the list of pot. Here's actually when I Google you, here's like this is quantifiable.
Yeah.
Like this is your confidence score when I Google you. And relative to other people, they have a knowledge panel and you don't.
Yeah.
Or they're visible and we can see there's 50 articles in that other person's name and only 12 in your name. Like you can quantify, you can argue like whether it matters or not, but either way, as long as once they start the discussion, they're agreeing that influence can be measurable. They just may quibble a little bit exactly. Oh, well, no, I actually think public speaking is worth more than or TV is worth okay, sure, whatever, right? Great.
Yeah, but we're not giving these categories value. We're just we're giving them ratings in their respective categories. It's not like, okay, we're not arguing public speaking versus podcasts.
We don't have to have a composite score, but what we are saying is that for any one of these categories, we can actually pull the underlying assets, the underlying ingredients, and then multiply the power. So get more ingredients, assets, and then multiply the power of existing assets. So like Caleb had, this video that went really well that was like, let's say this is one of his key assets here. And here's one key speaking thing where he spoke at NAFA. But this thing happened a few years ago. Let's multiply this. If we can scan all this stuff and find this is a key asset, this one here is a key asset. So this one, and this one, and this one are your key assets. Yeah. The way we strategically amplify this influence is of all the things you have, instead of going after everything, let's go after this, this, and this. And then when we dollar day it or whatever, we see it's increased.
Well, and a lot of people make the mistake that they have this big win and then they just kind of let it organically trickle out, where you can continue to leverage that and amplify it and keep editing that message and putting it through different forms. And
which is arbitrage.
Which is arbitrage, but also then you put dollar day against it.
Right.
And you have that win, but you're parlaying it onto other things on and on and on.
Yeah.
So
this is a good mapping.
Just because it happened 2-3 years ago doesn't mean we can't do the same exact thing.
So you've moved from where other people are, where it's conceptual, the idea of a blueprint, the idea of like to be famous, like to be very famous is to have this high rise thing. Okay. To now this is very practical. This is, we can see the details. And then before you even meet with them the first time, we produce this whole report. Yeah. Which I can show you how to do that. Now they're like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that. And we'll say like, okay, would you agree this is one of your best assets of your brand, your reputation, credibility? And they're like, oh yeah, it is. Okay, well that was 5 years ago. Nobody's seen that in the last 4 years. Yeah. Why don't you leverage that asset? Oh, I know, but I've been busy and yeah, you're right. I need, then there's no need to sell them at that point, right?
Yeah, it's just like they just continue to reinvent the wheel.
Right.
When they can leverage the success that they have.
Right. It's that easy. And if they're logical, if they follow this other criteria where they believe that reputation is important, even though it's not immediately. So anyone comes in and says, I need to have 3 new clients right away, and every dollar I spend, I need to see like leads coming in right, just like running advertising. Like, no, we're not a fit for you. That's not what this is. This is about influence, not direct selling.
So how do you word that in because that's obviously a requirement of who do I serve, is that they understand that conceptually, that it's not like, this is not a dollar for dollar marketing campaign.
You say it just like that. You're very clear. This is not a direct selling program. This is not hiring sales reps. This is increasing your influence over time, which is measurable, but it doesn't drive sales immediately. Just like, building your reputation doesn't drive immediate sales. So if someone says like, okay, well, I expect in the first month, after spending $2,500 with you, I expect you give me 2 clients. If I don't get 2 clients, your thing's a failure. That's like saying, okay, world-class personal trainer. After 30 days of working with you, I better have 6-pack abs and bench press 300 pounds.
It's an exponential journey.
Right.
And
That's
the
true,
beauty of it.
but you can't really say it that way because then it sounds like an excuse, like, oh, you have to give me more time. Oh, you mean you have to keep paying you?
Yeah, but then that's where our quantitative reports can come in.
And I think the vibe, because when the way clients decide who they're going to go with is they look at who their friends are going with. So if friends of mine and friends of Caleb see that you're like that's already a filter because similar people hang out together.
For sure.
Yeah. Like Matthew Janusek, if he pitched it, he'd probably even sign up for this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's killing the game on podcasts, but then all this other stuff, especially publications, jumps out to me.
And I don't think this has to be like super exact to directionally point out where they're stronger or not. And I don't think anyone's going to like argue, like, oh no, this should actually be a B+. Like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, the gradings are relatively subjective anyway.
This is really just a discussion. This is a tool to frame the discussion.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
It's because I'm all about not everyone can conceptualize things just by verbal exchange.
Yeah.
And so it'll be really good to be able to get into a meeting or even have pre-recorded things. Hey, I did this.
Yeah.
I did this. I went in and worked out all this stuff and gave you a grading report and then explain it real time.
Now imagine high rise. This is they want to build a skyline. So right now they have the skyline of Orange County, but it could be New York City, right? Like this is like the World Trade Center. I mean, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, that's really clever.
And then you could even, if you wanted to, like this is the Burj Khalifa, and it's like, what is it, like 2,000 feet high? I don't know, something ridiculous, really high, right? Yeah.
Perfect.
I can already see, like I think for people who are very high intelligence, who tend to be like engineers tend to be like that because you have to be able to see things in like esoteric things, you have to be able to see them and use similes and analogies to frame them. But I think the right client you have, founder-led businesses where they understand that influence is quantifiable and they want to grow it and they're willing to be coachable and they understand it's a longer-term thing, but we can still measure it. And they understand, prior to you, they had a fuzzy idea that, yes, if I speak, if I network, if I do these things, that somehow is going to result in just like paying it forward. I don't know, like magically the universe is going to manifest or something. But now we can actually make this visible. I think just showing this model, putting a book around this even, because we can have another guide. It's not like you can only have one book, multiple. Like this talk we have here can be turned into a book by itself.
Awesome.
Right? But when you have a hard deliverable that clearly reflects the value, that is a measurement of the concept, not just like a conceptual, there's a lot of these like conceptual books out there in like marketing and sales or whatever.
For sure.
Great, like, wishful thinking sorts of things. But this is very tactical and practical. Then they understand, well, if I know I've got a lot of podcasts, but they're not turned into websites or not repurposed into YouTube or whatever it is, then they're like, yeah, I know I could do that. I just don't have the people or the time or know how. Like, that's why we have a program to multiply this for you.
To integrate it for you.
If you just hire some random person on social media, some kid to do your Instagram or whatever, they're just going to start doing stuff randomly because if you don't start with a blueprint, in fact, if you don't first start with a scan of what the assets are and then build a blueprint against that, you're just going to you might as well hire 50 random construction workers with no plan, and they all just start hammering and pouring cement and
For sure.
What are you going to get?
Yeah, it's like there's no organized or method to the madness. But
so what they really want, they really need the architect to figure out exactly what the blueprint is because the magic you've been to some tall buildings, right?
Yeah.
Like the Sears Tower in Chicago or whatever, right? Do you think that the workers there, any of the workers that poured the cement or the gridiron, or like, do you think any of those were like super special workers?
Not necessarily.
It was the architect and the engineer. I mean, I'm sure like the people who like put in the glass, they were just like normal people who put in the glass, right? The same thing here. So with this blueprint, we can leverage ordinary workers to execute the blueprint. The most important part is the blueprint, and that because if the blueprint's wrong, then the building will collapse, and all that kind of stuff.
And do you think, like with the blueprint model, is this like a description of the pre-hiring process, or do you think the blueprint is they're already kind of signed on board? What do you think?
What do you think?
I was thinking at first that it'd be like post signing on. But I've kind of changed my mind a little bit.
I think once there's this point, it's pretty much a done deal.
I mean, this is pretty much like
because you're leading with your own influence because you're practicing what you preach. If you don't lead, If you lead with your own influence, meaning your network and leveraging your strengths, by the time they get to this, because before you have the first meeting, we will wow them, because most of the time when you have a first meeting, it's like this general discussion. Oh, where'd you go to school? And oh, what kind of goals do you have? Oh, tell me about your business. And it's like this information discovery thing. But instead, when you get on that first call, you'll be like, you know what? And by the way, our team already prepared some research. Bam.
Yeah.
How does that affect the conversation? What's the tone of the conversation like that when we already have this in place?
And I mean, how easy it is. We could just turn into a podcast, into an article for them, and have that to present.
So as part of, if you really want to wow them, because you think they're going to close, because they will when they come in, not only do you have this, but you identify what you think is their best podcast. So we have a way of scoring authority, which ChatGPT knows how to do too, right?
Cool.
3 components of authority, which is kind of like this thing here. But then we say, you know what? Just like you said, what if this one podcast that you had with Dave Ramsey or like whatever it was, right? Wouldn't that okay, so a lot of people saw it on YouTube, but what if we put it on Facebook? What if we turned it into an article? What if we did, wouldn't that be super awesome? And they're like, yeah, it would be. Here it is. We already did it for you.
Yeah.
What would you think if we went ahead and we identified all these other assets? These are the ones that appear to be the highest authority. Do you have confidence that we can do this for your other assets? Do you have confidence that this is the kind of plan that will strategically grow your brand and grow your business, not just to be famous, but actually attract the right kind of clients that you have?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I'm essentially just a middleman. I'm not really creating anything. I mean, there will be, I'm creating all of this model, but also like I'm leveraging work that they've already done.
You're a catalyst.
That's
a middleman almost has no value, but you're a catalyst because your presence in organizing allows them to bring in their existing team, or then we can hire VAs or whatever it is to get it done. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just an organizer.
But most organizers are just project managers. There's an architect. The architect level has this, the strategic view. Organizers don't. Organizers are like managers. They're not strategically looking forward.
For sure.
Managers are just executing the plan. You're building the plan. That's more important.
Exactly. Cool. So what do you think, like this would be like the blueprint? This is pretty much my kind of like this is the first meeting. What do you think would be, I mean, this is pretty much, I mean, I don't know.
So the first month is just creating, I mean, when you want to build a new house or a skyscraper, I mean, how long does it take from saying, okay, we want it to be, here's the idea of what the building should look like. It needs to look like a giant claw. I don't know, whatever it is, right? How long until they actually start building? Months, right? Not to say we're going to take months, but what's a realistic time frame from this meeting to actually having a blueprint that's detailed with the plan, with the assets, everything mapped out?
Yeah.
A month, that's reasonable. So the first month is planning, right?
Cool.
Second month is organizing and processing these assets, which maybe is 2 months.
Yeah. So you think that like the first month could be the blueprint process, even though like part of the blueprint will be still, we haven't closed yet.
Well, the blueprint architect analogy only works, and then, it doesn't work perfectly. And no analogy ever works perfectly to the world. But let's say, because part of it is in the real world where you build a house, you can't be changing the blueprint as you go. Yeah. Because that's just, it's not going to work. I'm going to report the foundation. No. But in the world of digital, I mean, you can't be like completely changing the thing, but we can make different adjustments along the way. Because as new ingredients come in, this affects the shape of how these different items go back and forth and whatnot. So I think that this blueprint is kind of basically the topic wheel and their content library mapped out in a way that makes sense. Not just a content calendar, but actually tied against what they stand for, what their goals are, who they serve, their goals, content, and targeting. So I think month one could be the blueprint. Number 2 could be, what's the foundation, like pouring the concrete and
the rebarb,
all that stuff. Yeah, and then 3, now you're actually building. But the building phase, I mean, that's going to be 90 plus days, right? You're not going to build a skyscraper in 90 days. You're not going to get 6-pack abs in 90 days. Yeah. It doesn't mean you're sitting around waiting 90 days for nothing to happen. You can see the progress along the way, but don't expect that we're done in the first month. You'll see progress every month. You'll see these numbers increase. You'll see us processing assets. Maybe even turn it into a book. Maybe, like whatever it is, right? And by then you'll have a book to show that, you know what, I did it too. Look, check this out. And now I'm the #1 bestseller in Amazon and all these other people have talked about it. Now I'm on these other podcasts. So you need to be on, I'll get you, well, you're on a podcast already. You're on mine, right? And you'll be practicing what we preach here.
For sure.
If this 19-year-old can do it, starting from, basic training a year ago from nothing, and now,
I didn't get out until January 28th.
whatever. It's still impressive. It's
I know.
Just,
I'm
it's just as
saying,
impressive.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm just happy, and it's all because of people like you that I'm even where I am today. So
yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. So now we just need to take all of this and turn it into more formalized, structured project planning documents. So then a client can say, okay, yes, I understand conceptually. You go through these phases, but what's it going to cost? What do you need from me? You know, and how do we communicate? And what can I expect to happen along the way? And if those boxes are all checked and they feel like they can see that they can see this.
Is that okay? Can you write those?
I don't know what I said, but I said it.
All the
So
boxes.
it's on here. Yeah, check
okay,
all the
that's
boxes.
fine,
Okay,
that's
we'll retrieve that. Then
and I'm sure we can plug this into ChatGPT and it'll summarize everything we said for us.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many
We
tools.
can do that, right? Like we can just.
We'll do that right now.
Okay,
Yeah, as soon as
sweet.
this is over, we'll do that. Yeah, it's like we're talking about AI while we're using AI. We're talking about the AI in front of the AI.
It's a paradox.
Yeah. So I believe you will get a lot of people to this stage here. Then the next question they're going to have is, what are the risk factors, such as what can cause us to fail? And another kind of the flip side of that coin is, so we believe in them, but you have to convince them that they can do it. You have to convince them that they can actually be this person and all that.
Yeah, but there already has to be some sort of evidence, a little bit at least. And then being able to show that, hey, when we come in and we said, hey, we already turned your most powerful podcast that we sent through our system to that grades the amount of authority that a piece of media has.
Right.
I mean, it's going to be pretty easy. And then we're showing them, hey, we already turned this into an article that you can post on your LinkedIn, your Facebook, on the web, on your web.
But you have to get them to be able to see themselves as being more influential. So what does that look like? So, and part of it, just like it's not a trial close, because a trial close is like trying to, asking for the sale. But another way to see whether we're in alignment is to say, okay, well, based on all this, when we execute these things and you are being seen, that podcast, it's not like you have to do a ton more work. We're leveraging what you've already done, and more people are seeing it, and your search results are, you're getting more people are DMing you, more people are, when you go to a conference, more people recognize you. You ask, what does that look like? Can you see it? Can you see, how does it feel? Like imagine that when you're walking through the conference hall and these other people know who you are. How does that feel? When you're in a meeting and it's with a potential client, and instead of them like sort of knowing who you are because there's a referral who sort of said, oh, you should work with so-and-so, but instead they said, and I also saw that YouTube you did with Caleb. How does that feel?
Yeah.
Right. And just like the two that you saw, whatever, yesterday or the day before that, where these people said, oh yeah, I saw you with AJ Wilcox. I also saw that you spoke at this big conference and I've always wanted to talk to you. That was a few years ago. How does it feel when that authority, that positioning is actually paying off and you see it in your lead gen? How does that feel? And what's that worth to you?
Yeah.
Right. And then at that point, it's like, is it worth $2,500?
Should be.
Yeah.
Then
they're selling themselves on it.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Cool. So we just got to create the documents, make it a clear process. And because I'm less concerned about trying to sell people. I know we could sell people. I want to make sure we can deliver the thing.
Yeah.
Right. And set expectations along the way. So
what do you think would be like the expectations? Like how often am I in a meeting directly with the client?
I think you have a 15-minute meeting with them every month.
Wow. That would be amazing.
In the first month, especially because we're still building this thing out and whatever we're anticipating what the various issues are. We don't have like an FAQ. We don't have examples.
The 15-minute conversation would pretty much just be giving them their report card.
Right. It always goes back. So people like consistency. So if we start with this report card or whatever we want to call it, or blueprint or scan, or what is it when you send an inspector to a house and check for foundational home inspector, like whatever it is, right? The city comes and makes sure the pipes aren't leaking.
We can and we'll be able to use ChatGPT to get all these clever...
Whatever the word name is for each of these things, right? But so the first meeting, first impressions are the most important. They understand this. Every meeting, you go back to that same framework and say, hey, look, here's what we've done. This is increased, this is increased. We also discovered this, we also processed this into this. So every month they can expect to see this improvement. And then that also gives, so it's not just the delivery of the report, because you can automate that and whatever. It's also, the most important part, I think, is when you have that monthly check-in, it doesn't have to be an hour. For some reason, people like to, meetings just somehow expand to an hour. you just say, so how has business been? Have you noticed? And I've done this enough times in other industries, not like this, but just as part of Dollar Day in general, sort of as a byproduct. You're doing it where this is like the main thing because we know it'll work. But how's business?
Yeah.
And or how was that conference you said you're going to? Or the whatever. They'll say like, yeah, I got 3 more people. I had 2 more clients sign up. This is amazing. You say, congratulations, that is awesome. And I've had clients come to me and say, and it must be this amazing thing just happened. I just closed this huge deal. I think it's because your Dollar Day thing. And you'll hear people saying that to you, right?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's going to be awesome.
Yeah. And then they start telling other people, and then you're by Zoom, by definition, all Zoom calls are recorded because you check the box, they're already recorded. So then you say, that is so awesome. I'm so happy for you. May I quote you on that? And they say yes. They always say yes. Now you've just built more of this, your influence. And that's how, you're the ultimate influence peddler because you're building everyone else's influence. And you already are so good as an ENTJ collecting all meeting. You're just like, naturally. You don't even have to ask me, like, oh, how was that lunch? Oh, you did great. You're fantastic with the CFO of a multi-billion-dollar company. Like,
I just wanted to, like, you're like the pro at this, so I wanted to get some constructive criticism.
But I almost thought you were fishing for a compliment. I thought it was great. I thought you did great.
Okay,
good.
Yeah. Good.
The key is you practice what we preach.
Yeah. I just need to get obviously better at the digital part. But I've just started. I don't have the years of podcasts, but that's an excuse. I need to.
Yeah, that's easy.
But that's what we're doing with the book. Filmed a bunch of content this week. Got a bunch of B-roll.
There it is. Okay, now it's time to build this. Unless there's other parts you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like the three step. And so this is 5 months, right? We could kind of stretch it out to 6.
Well, 6 month analysis and whatever it is.
Yeah, I could also see like a 6 month we could build out a new model after 6 months.
I think it makes sense. Like 6 months is generally the amount of time it takes to really get anything meaningful done. You're never, you can't get something meaningful done in like 30 days, because then you could say, because what you don't want to have is something that's just. I mean, I love the idea of recurring income, but this is not one of those like, oh, I'm just going to keep charging you indefinitely $2,500 every month, and there's just like no plan. I'm just going to like make up an excuse to just get another month out of you. But you can say after 6 months, I'd expect this to this, right? And then at this point, let's assess what we want to do next.
Yeah.
Right. And what are the options?
Would it be an upcharge after that, do you think?
Upcharge sounds like you're about to feed them more.
Yeah.
No one wants to be feed more. Instead, it's okay. So let's assume we can execute this and we're successful. So if we're successful, then maybe we need to hire. Let's decide. Maybe we need to hire an in-house person. Because now you got so much content. Now you decided, you actually like podcasting. So actually you want to do more podcasts and have your own podcast instead of being on other people's podcasts or like whatever it is. Or they decide what they like or what they don't like, right? But in-house is one way to do it. Another way is continue, right?
What do you mean with in-house? Like, because how would I continue to profit off that? Or is that just
you hire?
That's
you say you can get a VA.
So I'm still the implementer, but through someone I hire.
Okay, so you say, you know what? You have so much content and whatever it is, you need your own dedicated person. Because what we did for the first 6 months was we used our team. And our team, we're growing our team, but as you expect, our team members are all working on a variety of projects, following this basic framework. But now you've reached a point where a certain level of maturity where I think you should have your own VA or a team of VAs. And that we can give you that for $1,000 a month, right? And then of course they're like, okay, yeah, that's great, but do you want to oversee that VA or do you want us to oversee the VA? Well, we want you to oversee it because you guys know how to actually do them, train them, and like give them feedback and help them develop and get better. And okay, cool. Well, you could do that, or you actually just make it cleaner. Say you can have your own VA for $750. But on an ongoing basis, we can do this for $1,500 or something like that. Actually, I don't know if these are the right numbers, but I'm just making up. We can always change them, right?
Yeah, that's down the road.
Because that way we could say, you know what, we did most of the development here, but we don't need to be operating at the same level. Because in building stuff, there was just like more stuff. But now things are working well. Now we just need to do. We don't need to produce more content, but now we need to do. Now we have existing content that works. Now we need to actually. Let's just say we need, the main focus now, we want to shift into advertising. because we've got the content. So initially it's, more content, repurposing content, which is like more content. But now we're going to spend money on advertising. And so instead of paying us the $2,500 fee, we want you to spend, let's figure out what the right number is, and we can justify the number based on how, we want you to spend $5,000 a month. And then our management fee is just 20%, right? So whatever you spend, the minimum of 1,000, I don't know, something like that. So that's one, when we can work with the numbers to be whatever. Or we could do like some sort of maintenance mode. And maybe the maintenance mode is $1,000 a month, like a just in case insurance policy, on call, we're monitoring, we're looking at some of this stuff. Maybe the VA thing is, you've done so well, we actually need to scale up from what we have. Actually, we should do the model of, $4,000 a month. And for $4,000 a month, we'll give you your dedicated team of our VIP, I don't even say VA, sounds bad, but like people who are maybe it's like,
just
whatever we call it, right?
Curated
concierge
team,
service, yeah. Not just like the pool of like the next available representative, but like we're going to give you people who really focus on
dedicated virtual architect.
Virtual architect. Ooh, I like virtual architect. VA, not just, virtual architect. I need to write this down. Even though you said it, we need to like emphasize it. The virtual architect, I like that.
It's clever.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, so we're going to invent our own language, but not get too far with too many acronyms.
Yeah, it's got to all tie in and make sense. Yeah. But people like stuff like this. It's easy to conceptualize.
That's the key here. And I've seen thousands of people in this whole personal branding, build your influence, PR, marketing. You can become famous, social media influencer. I've never seen anybody systematize it like this in my entire career. I've never seen it. That's cool.
That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Because the last thing I want, like, I can't tell you how many young Instagram bros, those sorts of people, the ones that pose with all the nonsense, like rented stuff or stuff that's not theirs.
I've got buddies.
Yeah, I get it. it looks cool, but we all know. But they love to sell because they think it's all about selling and trying to convince, like the thrill of the kill, like trying to sell some client who's like some deer target. He's like, you're trying to shoot deer. No one wants to be shot at, right? But they're out there like shooting deer is the way they look at clients. And it's all like macho. Yeah, I closed 3 deals today, or,
Sell me this pen sort of vibe.
Jordan Belfort kind of like,
That's the type of bagger we're not talking about.
That's the douchebag. That's It's different. But those folks are all about anything to collect the money and then just go buy Coke and snort up in the bathroom, right?
Quaaludes.
We're talking about, we're aiming towards the client success. I know everyone says, oh yeah, client success is number one, but do they really measure the client success? And then we let this speak for themselves. So let's say they reach month 6, our special little thing we won't put here, but we'll build internally is we put them on your podcast talking about, hey, you're a financial services person. I want to interview you, not as a testimonial, but how did you grow, and how did you grow your, what was key for your influence, and what do customers say about you? And for other people, if you were giving advice to people who were like you 6 months ago, what would you say to them, right? What were some of the greatest challenges that you've had? Not even in the influence thing, but just like in general, what were those? So, because you're interviewing like a podcast host. You're not trying to talk about your product or the architecture, but by them talking about their story, they naturally will gravitate towards talking about how good you are, and then you get a very authentic testimonial.
Yeah.
But you never say testimonial, you never ask for one, you call it the Strategic Influence Podcast.
Cool. This is awesome.